But him telling me that we're going to send $1 million invoice one day, I know without a doubt in my mind with 100% certainty that we're going to send it one day, right? And so when you say what's been the most, fun or incredible things, what I'll tell you is just the constant moment in which I surprise myself.
Unfinished Business Podcast Show with your host, David Sliman.
Welcome to the Unfinished Business Podcast Show, everybody, where we deep dive in the stories and strategies of successful entrepreneurs. And today, I am freaking jacked about having this guy on. Jeremy Jenson's with us, and he's the founder and CEO of Encore Search Partners, one of the nation's premier recruiting firms specializing in tough-to-find talent. But more than that, this guy has built a powerhouse of a company. His growth has been really, really strong, and we're going to dig into that. He also has a podcast called The Path to Success, so you can gain some insight on life lessons and experience from individuals who are successful. But today, we're going to talk about his success. And if you're curious about what it takes to really be successful in the business jungle, this is the guy you're going to want to listen to. He's inspiring. He's got a lot of energy. And I'm really excited again to have him on the show. So Jeremy, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here, buddy.
Excellent, man. Thank you for having me, and welcome to my crib. There you go, MTV season 84. Yeah.
I told you, there's no energy with this guy at all. He doesn't. We're just going to kick ass today. So hang in there on this one. You're going to learn a lot. So listen, talk to me today. What was the defining moment for you? Because we have a lot of listeners out there who either want to get into business for themselves, who are in the jungle right now, and also have been there. What was the defining moment for you in getting into business for yourself and becoming the entrepreneur?
Well, excellent. I know you're probably wanting me to share this like super insightful story of me getting a swift kick in the ass. But the fact of the matter is I was 25 years old and I was working a corporate job making 75K. And I had just popped the question to my fiance, who was 2 years older than me, is a petroleum engineer, and she was making about $110,000 a year. So I took a look at myself in the mirror and said, "Man, I really need to make more money than my future wife." And I don't have a college degree, right?
Yeah.
And I knew that was always going to inhibit my upward mobility and my growth in corporate America. And so I sat down with her and said, "Hey, I have this idea of me wanting to go out and start my own business." And fortunately, she supported it from day one, right? I can tell you that her parents didn't support it. They thought that she was marrying an unemployed guy because they didn't see the difference between self-employed and unemployed. But luckily, fast forward 15 years, man, and it's paid off big time for
Paid
sure.
off big time, man. And
Mm-hmm.
talking about your business today, all right, you went from 1 million, you hit the $1 million threshold, I think, in about 7 years, right? And then over the last 6 years, you've grown to 13 million. So you obviously hit a threshold of growth. Talk to me about that path and some of those moments and really the team you're building and how you've been able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it took me about 6 years to hit that $1 million mark. I think there's a lot of solopreneurs out there, whether they're CPAs or attorneys or people of that nature, management
Yeah.
consultants that are making $500,000 a year, and they look at the mirror and say, "Man, I'm successful." But the problem is that's not a scalable business, right? I mean, at the end of the day,
Yes.
it's you providing a service. And so really it was us, getting pregnant with our first child, and me realizing that there were really not enough hours in the day for me to scale, right? At the time I was making about 250 grand, and I was doing about 500,000 in revenue. And so I had a couple of support people. But I took a look at my client base and realized, man, about half my clients are providing recruiting services, and here I am providing lead generation
Mhm.
services. I'm actually in the wrong business. And so really it was me having the humility to say, even though I've put in the business processes, systems, and marketing in order to become a successful marketing and lead generation firm, that really wasn't the business model that was going to help scale. And so in late 2012, we decided to change the business model to a recruiting firm. And so I grew it to about 1 million there, right? And then the growth catalyst was me bringing in a VP of operations to kind of put in the processes, systems, and accountability that could create a mechanism for me to systematize the business so I could focus on what I did best, which was sales and marketing, right? And let him kind of mess with everything else. And so that was the growth catalyst that ultimately led to our success back in 2016 when I onboarded him.
See, and that's fantastic. And I want to make a point here, okay? Because you said some really important things when it comes to scaling. Because, like you said, there's a lot of people who are entrepreneurs right now who are just working almost like a job, right? And they can't scale it. And the only way that you're going to be able to grow is by putting, as simple as it may sound, which it's not. If you don't do it from the beginning, you have to backtrack. You have to do the
Yeah.
work. There's no way around it. You've got to put the processes and systems in place, and then you've got to put the right people in place.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is I think that a lot of individuals think that whenever you're making that first key hire that you can't get it wrong. And the analogy that I use is you're not putting a ring on it, right? You're not giving them 50-50 equity in the company. And so it's funny because the people that we use to go from 1 million to 3 million are different than the people that we use to go from 3 million to 7 million and then from 7 million to over 12, right? But it's important to just create the role, and then every couple of years you can kind of reevaluate, are their skills and KPIs tied to what we deem as the favorable outlook and results that we want to get, right? And so a lot of people are so hyper focused on not missing on that first hire, but at the end of the day, you kind of just need to get somebody in the roster spot.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you have the processes in place, again, we keep coming back to this. Once you have the processes in place, you can plug and play some people. And not that we want to churn or move anybody in and out of the position, but realistically, you definitely can do that. So I want to talk about playing to your strengths. Okay. You said something earlier, and I really believe this. Being able to play to your strengths, but also when you're growing an organization, letting people lead, failing forward or failing fast. We had one on talked earlier about failing fast, but letting people, giving them enough direction to take the ball and run with it without being, because you're running an organization, without being micromanaging, so to speak. Talk to me about that experience for you, because there's no way you grow the way you did without being able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I think what was important for us was to really clearly define what is our mission, right? Why are we doing it? What is our vision? What does success look like, right?
Yeah.
And then what are our values? And so once we clearly define those, and we started to really drive them home in our weekly level 10 meetings and our monthly manager meetings and our quarterly executive meetings and our company town halls, we put the values, we put the mission, the vision right on the wall. We had to identify what was our core focus, what was our why. Once we did a good job of identifying that and then providing consistency on implementing it, then it allowed me to literally brainwash some of the key people that we had in the organization. And so, yeah, sure, it doesn't happen overnight, but over the course of 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, maybe now some of these people have even been here for 5 years. They just think the way that I think now because of the consistency on us implementing the systems and the processes, right?
Yeah.
And so when you talk about delegating and elevating, sure, I can't do that to somebody that's only been there for a week, right? But if I have all of the information and I'm consistent around not only saying it, but living it, and I start to explain to them why we're doing it, now they can start making decisions in the way that I would do it myself.
Yeah, I think you used another great word, which is consistency. You've got to be consistent. And what I like to talk about, I mean, I know I want to touch on the EOS system, right, in a minute here, because you mentioned things that definitely you're using that system. But I like to call it organizational alignment. Again, you're leading the organization, and sometimes it's not the people leading the organization, it's about those who are leading the charge. And I think that's where you are making a lot of strides and really getting people to buy in. And I like the term brainwash, but yes, buy into it of
Sure.
what you're doing. But talk to me about the EOS system you've used and how it's complemented you, because I've had a few guests on who've talked about it.
Yeah, so we self-implement. EOS is basically a business framework that was created by a gentleman by the name of Gino Wickman, who wrote a
Mhm.
book called Traction.
And yes,
Um, and really, it's a set of tools and systems utilized in order to provide data and a mechanism to make decisions, right, as an executive team. And so a lot of times when companies don't have an integrator or that COO or somebody that's a little bit more process oriented than us crazy visionary entrepreneurs,
yes,
a lot of times they'll need a third party consultant to be the facilitator. But as I mentioned, we just self implemented from day one.
great.
But it was a 2-day strategy session for us to kind of unpack everything that was in my brain, and then for me to explain to my VP and my president why this was my vision, why this is what I thought was my
Well,
mission, why these were my values. And it's funny because when my integrator asked me, "Hey, Jeremy, what are our core values?" He didn't ask me like that. What he did was he said, "Tell me about the last 10 times you fired somebody." Right. And
right.
then I just thought about all the people and I wrote down all the reasons. And then after looking at that data, then that's what created the very first iteration on what Jeremy's non-negotiables were, right? What were the core values of the organization? And so when you say, what does EOS provide? It provides transparency, it provides clarity, it provides a forum for me to be on the same page with my executive team. It provides mechanisms in order for me to trickle that down to mid-level managers, and then it provides an ecosystem for us to get that information and that data to the employees. And they know that it's not just Jeremy being a stickler. They know that when I signed that offer letter and said, "Hey, I'm on board with working for Encore Search's mission, vision, and values," all the company is doing is just holding me accountable to doing what I said that I was going to do. Right. And so
That's it.
it really breeds a tremendous amount of trust, rapport, camaraderie, gratitude. It's been an amazing transparency mechanism within the
That's
organization.
great. And the accountability on that side is just
Mhm.
is phenomenal. It keeps everybody on the same page. And listen, if there's a cog in the wheel that's not moving, it's very apparent. It happens quickly. So that's great insight. Listen, on your path to growth, what was one of the more challenging moments for you that you had to press through? Obviously, once you hit the 1 million mark to that 13 million,
Yep.
I want to talk about that path. Was there one defining moment, or maybe a few, that were just challenging? You pressed through and you went, damn, I broke a threshold here.
When you say press through, are you saying it was an exciting time or you were saying it was a scary time? What do you want me to talk about?
Let's talk about the scary time first, and let's talk about the exciting time next.
Yeah, the scary time was probably most recently, right?
Okay.
We brought in a first year associate. Her name is Christina Lyles, and this was back in January of 2020. And I tell you, in the interview, I knew I had someone special, right? She was working in tax consulting and she was making about 120 grand. And the offer that I gave her to come on to Encore Search as an individual contributor was 30,000 more than I had ever given anybody at the associate level
Okay.
before. But I knew that she was someone special.
Okay.
Over the course of 8 years, Christina Lyles was promoted. I'm sorry, over the course of 4 years, she was promoted 4 times. And she ultimately became our vice president of legal search and had a seat at the executive table, right? This
Yeah.
woman was a consistent 7-figure earner. She was consistently making over $700,000 a year. And she was someone that I was proud to say was the poster child of Encore Search on digital media and in the community. But when she came into my office about 5 months back and said, "Hey, Jeremy, I've been doing some soul searching and I think I want to go out on my own and start my own firm, but I wanted to be transparent with you because you've been a great mentor for me and you've always been above board. And I know that you're a proponent of entrepreneurship." And, she had tears in her eyes, and this was not a conversation she was excited to have. And she had probably rehearsed it 3 weeks, with her boyfriend,
Yeah.
until she had the guts to come talk to me about it. But here I was losing somebody that I had invested so much in, that I had seen such a promising future in being on the executive team at Encore Search. And it was really challenging for me because I was losing my top biller. I was losing a female executive. I was losing a mentee that I had so much pride in providing, the structure and accountability and mentorship and technical guidance in order for her to achieve so many of her professional goals. And so I wouldn't say that it was fear of losing the revenue,
Yeah.
but it was almost like I was losing a business partner to
Yeah.
some extent, or even like my wife, that she and I got divorced in 2019,
Yeah.
and it was a sad moment, but I understand that it's just business, and who am I to try to hold people back from achieving their full potential, even if that means they've got to go out on their own.
Right. And listen, there's a lot of emotions that go with that. I've been there too.
Mhm.
Okay. What's your initial reaction? And then what's the lesson learned on that deal?
My initial reaction whenever she told me was, fuck, I should have given her equity in the company, right? Maybe something along those lines.
Yeah.
When the dust settled, it was certainly, and I had a chance to process it. It was, you know what? We can backfill her production. It might take me 3 people to produce the revenue that she produced, but at the end of the day, revenue is just a matter of stealing market share, right? I mean, it doesn't come out of thin air, and so we just need to do a better job at marketing, a better job at business development, client management, service delivery, right? And if I could
Yeah.
improve by 5% across the board, then that will help me recoup a lot of the revenue that she helped generate for the firm. But now that it's been, 5 months, 6 months, and I've realized that, life goes on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The business is still intact. Clients are still calling us, right? She had some clients that left and wanted to go work with her, and there were some clients that wanted to stay with us. And, at the end of the day, may the best man win, right?
It was
It's a matter of competition be breeding a great client experience, because we all know that we can't get lazy, we
Yes.
can't get complacent. Even me as a leader, I have to provide an incredible experience for our employees if we want to retain top talent.
Yeah. I think, I'm totally aligned with you. The first initial is, okay, what could I have done second or best? What could I have done? You start playing Monday morning quarterback, right? And then you stop for a second and you go, listen, I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to regroup here. We're going to tighten everything up. We're going to get stronger because of this, and game on. And game on, brother, because that's what it's about. It's the competition. You're going to have that. And you know what? It's a true testament to the way that you're running your organization. She's going to go off and be successful because of the foundation that you have given her. And I think you should actually be very proud of that. And I know in the beginning it's a very challenging thing, and but more importantly, it's a true reflection of your leadership and the way that you're running your organization. So I'd say hats off to you in that situation.
Oh man, thanks for the kind words. You know what I kind of look at it like? I kind of look at it that I'm Bill Parcells, right? And I've got this incredible downline of all these amazing head coaches that went and won championships out on their own. But it doesn't take away the championships that I brought to the
Yeah,
table as well.
there you
So
go. There you go.
we'll all end up in the Hall of Fame.
That's right, man. That's right. All right. So now talk to me on the flip side. One of the pinnacle moments for you so far. And listen, we call the show Unfinished Business.
Yeah.
Jeremy still has a path. I still have a path. We all have a path. But talk to me about some of your a winning moment that you have. You'd love to share.
Oh man, so many winning moments, man. Back in 2016, when I held a check that a client had written us from one placement that was 117,000 was the finder fee, and there was so much pride whenever I held that check back in 2016. Right, the first six-figure invoice. Fast forward a couple of years, the very first month that we did over $1 million in revenue in 1 month, that was so massive, right?
That's great.
Fast forward a couple of months after that, we sent out one invoice totaling $697,000. Basically, what we did was we introduced the managing partner of a firm for an opportunity. And during the discovery process with our client, he decided that he could convince his other partners, and they moved the entire 14-person firm to our client. So we were able to charge a $697,000 recruiting fee, right? And it's so funny because I sat down with my division president now, his name's Casey Knight, and I said, Casey, I never would have thought this was even believable that we could send a nearly $700,000 fee. And he told me, he said, Jeremy, one day we're going to send $1 million invoice. And it was so funny because when Casey started 9 years ago, if he would have told me, hey, Jeremy, we're going to send a six-figure invoice one day, I probably would have said, oh, I'll believe it when I see it. But him telling me that we're going to send $1 million invoice one day, I know without a doubt in my mind with 100% certainty that we're going to send it one day, right?
I
And
love
so when
that.
you say what's been the most, fun or incredible things, what I'll tell you is just the constant moment in which I surprise myself. Right, in 2022, hitting $10 million a year, in revenue for the year, that was massive. Right, in 2024, us having our very first $2 million month, that was incredible. Right, and so it's just this constant moving target of opportunities for me to surprise myself have been some of the most exciting things that we've done at Encore Search Partners. And it's really weird to say because when you talk about that path to success, I think sometimes we can rob ourselves from the feeling of feeling successful
Yeah.
because as entrepreneurs, we always want more, want more, want more, right?
Yeah.
And I think that whenever I was young, I was chasing money. Then I got a little bit, and then I was chasing power.
Yes.
And then I got a little bit of that, and then I was chasing fame or influence, right? These were more things that I was chasing. And I'll tell you that, if all you're doing is chasing those three things, well, I guess what? You're never going to be satisfied,
Nope.
right? And so I think that in this new season of life, of me being a little bit more hyper focused on peace and emotional satisfaction, right? It's really created this opportunity for me to be a lot more grateful for what I have and a little bit more hyper focused on just providing a great employee experience and client experience. Because if you're focused on those two things and putting people over profit, I think that everything will always work itself out.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it was interesting because I did my last acquisition. I would, you have this vision of how the money's great, but then it's like once it was done, I was like, man, it's not exciting as I thought it was going to be. Right. Like I sat for a moment and I was like I felt great when it was done, but then I was like, man, this wasn't like next day for me. All right, what's next? Like,
Well, dude,
that's what I'm going for is like,
dude,
what's
if anything, it just puts you in worse of a fucking mood, man. I tell you, I've got a $400,000 Ferrari sitting in the garage, right? And every time I take it out and I hit a speed bump or something and I hear that sound, and I'm like, oh my God, this is heartbreaking. I almost prefer to drive my Ford Raptor over the expensive car, man. And I tell you, it's like, what's it all for?
that's it.
Just to prove to your next door neighbor that you're successful?
Yeah. Done with
that
that
you're
shit.
smart, that you're really, really good at what you do. Well, why can't I have all my employees just out there in the community telling everybody?
That's it. And that's what I want to dig into next, because you're building a culture of excellence. We talked about this when we connected the first time. And there's this balance of giving your employees the ability to be successful, giving them the direction. And then there's also that balance when someone's not pulling their weight of, identifying that and doing it in a professional way, but bringing an all-star team together. And I want to talk to our listeners about your culture and some of the hinging, I would say the cornerstones of how you've built such a great culture and what the expectations are within your organization.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for asking that. What I'll say is culture starts at the top down, right? You've got to live your values. You've got to make sure that your words match your actions, that your actions match your words first and foremost. And until you're willing to do the work and have the humility to hyper focus on that, I tell you, you're never going to have an amazing culture because it starts at the top, right?
Great point.
And so, I do a lot of work with an executive coach, right? It's somebody that I've worked with since 2021. He's given me a mechanism to identify what are my blind spots, where am I succeeding, where am I failing. We do a good job of doing confidential surveys every single quarter and taking that feedback and implementing positive change. Or sometimes we take some of the survey results and we address it in front of the entire company. And we say, hey, guys, this is never going to change.
Yeah.
And if it's something that you think that you want, you might have to go to another organization in order to achieve it, right? And so just having the authenticity, the vulnerability, the transparency, the focus on self-growth and improvement, right? I think that's all important to build a great culture. Another thing that I think is important is for me to tell you. I think you said a team of all-stars. We're definitely not the all-star team if we were to make an NBA reference, right? But we're damn sure, the Golden State Warriors or the LA Lakers or the Milwaukee Bucks. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I
Because you
got
do have all-stars, but you got to have the role players. You got to have the people that are comfortable coming off of the bench and letting the all-stars shine, right? Because if you put a bunch of big egos all in one room, right? I tell you that type of culture, in my experience, breeds toxicity and it breeds entitlement, right? And so as somebody that has experience in putting in processes and systems to maximize a sales and performance culture, I think it's important to recognize that there's always going to be a number one and a number two salesperson. And it's okay that we still need number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, because no matter how much shit you sell, there can only be number 1.
Right. There's only one number one, man. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you handle, okay, so let's flip it, right? In the other side of this, for someone who's not producing, can you give our listeners some strategies on some of the things that you implement and how you address it?
Yeah, so it's probably not going to be the answer of what you want to hear. What I can tell you is as a business owner, we do a great job of highlighting our culture through digital media, right? We give awards, we recognize our people, we pay extremely well. We're great at storytelling on some of the big wins that our revenue producers are part of. And so what that does is it breeds an organic following of people that are familiar with the winning performance culture at Encore Search. And so that creates this never-ending demand of early career talent that want to be developed by our ecosystem, right? That's number one. There's always demand. And so, a lot of times we talk about moving the middle. Okay, like if your middle sales guy is selling 500K, how can we move the middle and get it to 600, right? Yeah. Well, the easiest way to do that is just charge more money for the shit that you sell. Right? That's really, really easy. And you're able to do that whenever you know you have the best team and you have a culture and you have people that everybody knows are the best in their field. And so that's number one. So if you want to increase your sales, raise your prices. But number two, never, ever, ever accept mediocrity or complacency, and just because somebody was a big revenue producer for you last year, but if they're in your bottom quartile today, have the confidence and the self-respect to put them on a performance improvement plan, provide the coaching for 30 days, and if they don't do it, get them off the team, man.
Yes,
Because if you have an amazing culture, you have to always keep a new pipeline of people that will come into the organization, and that will help elevate the performance of your middle.
that's it.
Because, dude, the middle people don't want to get smoked by the fucking new guy. No way.
No way.
So you got to
Mediocrity.
constantly be bringing in new people.
Mediocrity is the silent killer. Because, and why I call it the silent killer is because there's some companies out there going, yeah, I can live with it, right? I can live with
He
it.
pays for himself.
Yeah.
Can you fucking do it if I ever hear that? He pays for himself, and that's the what? How many times have you heard that as a coach?
Yeah, he pays for himself.
He pays for himself? Oh my God.
That's the silent killer right there, man. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you use that word. I'm glad you use that
Yeah.
word. I want to switch gears. That's great, by the way. Fucking love it. I love
But
it.
dude, you gotta have some balls. You gotta be able to have the confidence and stand in front of the company and say, hey guys, right? Cost of labor for any successful professional services organization is right 33 to 45%, right?
Yeah.
And then you got overhead, which is another 30%, and then you got partner compensation, which is another 30%. So, hey guys, if you're not generating at least 2.5 times to 3 times your personal income and revenue, you're not profitable. You're not profitable.
And that right there, everybody, is clarity. That is clarity. And listen, I can tell you that with Jeremy, he's going to give you everything he's got, everything he has for you to be successful. But if you can't go out there and grab it, he has no remorse for that kind of shit. And I'm with you. I think when it comes to running an organization, everyone wants to say, hey, we're the family. And that's kind of, in certain organizations, listen, there's a family trust and all that good stuff. But more importantly, it's starting to turn, I'm hearing this more about building a winning team and not so much a family, right? Like family is kind of what we're stuck with. And you talked about that, putting a ring on the finger earlier. But building a winning team is what it's really geared around. So I think that's great. Listen, I want to touch on something. Okay, you talked about an executive coach. What are some of listen, you're a successful guy. What are some of your personal habits? I always like to dig into this a little bit. Okay, some of the personal habits that you have that keep you sharp, because it's all a blend. It carries over. Personal and professional habits, they do carry. To be successful as an entrepreneur, you've got to have personal habits, strong personal habits to be successful. Talk to me about some of the things you do personally.
Yeah, so I I'm not doing cold plunges and fucking infrared therapy. I'll tell you that right now. But But I meet with my business coach every single week, right? We talk about life, we talk about love, the pursuit of happiness, right? Financial independence. We talk about being a steward of goodwill in the community. We talk about humility, gratitude, focus, discipline, resilience, accountability, right? And so it's really being hyper focused on becoming a better version of myself each and every day, right? That's first and foremost, right? But number two, I find really, really amazing people that are excited about building with me. And then I just give them all the systems and tools and I continue to invest in them, right? Friendships, relationships, employees, my children. And so I don't need to be the helicopter boss. right? I don't need to be the helicopter dad, right? And so just being a great communicator and providing this vision of where we need to go and why we're going there and the code of conduct in which we need to make decisions and carry ourselves through that process. You'd be surprised at what people are capable of. As long as they just think the same way as you, they probably don't even need to score a 40 on a Wonderlic test, right? And so those two things. But then the main thing that I personally do is I focus on my mood and my mindset continually, right?
Great.
And I'll give you an example. My AC broke, right?
Yeah.
At a house that I lived at before here. And I just gave my card to my IT director and I go, hey, can you handle this? Right. And then he comes and he brings it back and he gives me the receipt. I go, I don't need to see the receipt. He goes, you don't want to know how much it costs? I go, no, because if I knew how much it costs, it'd probably put me in a bad mood. Right. I was like, I know that when I get home, the fucking air conditioning is fixed.
Right.
And when I get the company Amex at the end of the day, there's no difference between 67,000 and 71,000 on the Amex, right? You get my point?
I get your point, man.
And so just like focus on being in a good mood, consume media, right? That makes you better, right? When I stopped, looking at reels on Instagram of girls shaking their ass in a bikini and started following Alex Hormozy, right? And Simon Sinek and Cody Sanchez, right? And it really allowed me to reframe my mindset and focus a little bit more on becoming a better version of myself and a little bit less focused on what I was losing and more so being hyper focused on what I was gaining in life.
Good information in, man, good information out. Good inputs, good outputs, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. So listen, this has been fantastic. And before we go, I want to ask you a couple more questions, okay? For if you could give advice to somebody right now who's leading organization and they're starting to level up or they want to level up, what kind of advice would you give them right now?
The main thing is I would say sell expensive shit to rich people. That's the number one thing that you should do, right? If you're selling a product or a service that is not in the top 10% of price, right, in your industry, I tell you that you need to really look at your product. You need to look at your customer, right? Because if you know that you're selling a premium product or a premium service to premium clients, now you have the gross margin to go out there and invest in premium talent, right?
Yes.
So that's the number one thing, right? Make sure your product is the best, make sure your clients are the best, and then by rule, now you can afford and go out and get the best people, right? That would be my main experience share. Whenever we started to walk away from some of our discount clients, the people that were expecting lower fees, that were looking for lower level people, what I was having to do was keep around lower level revenue producers to service those accounts. And then it was breeding mediocrity.
That's great advice. And there's a book, I wanted to pull it off. 10X is easier than 2X. I don't know if you ever heard the book. I was going to
Dan Sullivan, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That is exactly what you're talking about. Putting your energy towards the ideal clients of people who are going to spend the money, because it's going to take the same amount of energy, right? It's going to take the same amount of energy, time, resources, and matters. Sometimes even the people who don't spend the money are more of a pain in the ass anyway. So identifying, and you'll do the same work, but you'll focus on the right clientele, and that's how you'll raise the bar. So I think that's great. All right, last question. What's next for you?
What's next for me is, I need to figure out a way to scale from where we're at today. Man, it's really easy to go from 1 million to 10 million, I would say.
Yeah.
So 10X was easier than 2X, but it's fucking hard to go from, right now this year, let's say we do 11.5 million to fucking 100 million, right? And so I think what's next for me is to do some type of a franchising agreement or some type of a licensing agreement, because we've got a good brand. We've got good processes and systems. We're really great at marketing. We're really great at social media and engagement. And there's a lot of talented individuals out there that are good revenue producers, and they're making $300,000-$400,000 a year, and they think that they're really fucking good.
Yeah, they think they're killing
But
it.
if I can have them come to the Encore Search ecosystem and scale from 400 grand to $1 million, and maybe they do have to carve off 20% from the top to be associated with my brand, but now they're making 800,000.
Yeah.
I tell you what, if I can figure that out, that's how we're going to get to 100 million.
Well, let me tell you, I have experience in the franchise world, and I started a franchise company. I built it and sold it, and it's a lot of work. But you're right. I mean, if you want to scale, that was one thing for me, was I wanted to scale my marketing company quickly, and it's a very good way to, if you got to do it right. But it's a very good way to scale your company, and also, like you said, you've got to have the systems in place too. You've got all the mechanism for that. So, we'll pick up a conversation on that sometime down the road for sure.
I'm very interested in having that discussion for sure.
For sure, absolutely. Well, Jeremy, you didn't disappoint, brother. I can tell you this right now. This show kicked ass. I really appreciate you being here today, and we need to stay in touch. We really do. I love your energy. I'm actually excited about the future for you and the path that's ahead, because you're just a guy who keeps climbing and leveling up. And there's something to be said about that. Really respect it.
You gotta stay grateful as well. Stay humble, stay hungry, stay grateful. Absolutely. You didn't even comment on my Taylor Swift back there too, man. The love of my life.
There it is, right there.
Yeah.
You said it in the beginning, so I should have commented on it. The Taylor Swift baby back there. That's a beauty. It looks great, dude. So listen, man, I want to thank you for being here. And everybody, Jeremy, if someone wants to reach out to you and just hit you up for some advice, again, I know you're big on giving back. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so I try to respond to all the messages that I get on LinkedIn. So it's just my name, Jeremy Jenson, and I've got a little goat emoji after my name. Shoot me a direct message on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to connect there. And then if you want to follow my personal life, follow me on Instagram as well. It's just my name, @Jeremy Jenson.
Great, man. Great. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And I got to tell you, it's been a blast. It's been a blast. So listen, he's Jeremy Jenson. I'm Dave Sliman. Check us out at salesperformance.com. This show is just, it's the guests like you that elevate the unfinished business, because he has unfinished business, and we're going to keep rocking and rolling. So thanks for your support, everybody. Like this show, share this show. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.
Unfinished Business Podcast Show with your host, David Sliman.